You can make something up in your head even if it doesn't exist in the real world. I'll give you an example. Yellow is just an optical illusion. On an RGB pixelated screen, there are no yellow lights, only red, green, and blue ones. Did you hear that LCD screens with RGB strings are made for humans? If you were a bird and looked at it, you'd think it was real. Humans only have red, green, and blue columns that detect color and the screen, while birds have ultraviolet detection but can't see red. Some animals, like shrimp, can see 16 different wavelengths, so if you made a screen for a shrimp, it would be a really complicated one. What we now call innovation is spelled with the letters INNER invasion. It is related to innovation but works a little differently. When you innovate, you don't do something new in the physical world. Instead, you do something different in your brain. One thing that drives me crazy when I go to digital conferences is that there's always someone there with a really advanced technological solution. For example, there's always a guy with a really smart beacon solution that can tell when a past customer is walking within 100 yards of the store. Right? Don't go to Harvard. Anyone can sell things by lowering the price. The art of marketing is to charge more for the same thing by making it seem better. The important thing here is to realize that you can do this. Just as you can make yellow in your head, you can make value in your head. And the best example of this is my favorite ad of the last 3 years, which was an announcement by an EasyJet pilot as the plane was coming into land. You know that feeling when your plane is about a mile from the terminal and you can see the sign for the terminal. People who wait get good things. You either love it or hate it. Reassuringly expensive, naughty but nice, and with a lot of great advertising taglines, or number 2. So we try harder. But in them, it's a very clever trick, because when you're given bad news and good news, you tend to focus on the good news to make yourself feel better. Really, really worthwhile. I've even told the government about this, saying that part of the problem with things like taxes is that there's no upside. The pilot said, "I've got some bad news and some good news." He said, the bad news is that we can't get an air bridge because another plane is blocking the gate. The good news is that the bus will take you right next to passport control, so you won't have to walk far to get your bags. A few of us looked at each other and said, "Isn't that always the case?" Shakespeare said the same thing, that there is no good or bad, only how you think about it. If you buy a Ferrari, they'll deliver it for free to your local dealership, or you can pay £500 to take a tour of the factory in Maranello, which you'll have to pay for yourself and then drive the car home. I don't know if you noticed, but by framing it as a tour of the factory, they've gotten you to pay to pick up your own car. Things aren't cheap, so I told them we'd give them A, who has an espresso machine. I do, and I love it like a child. It's crazy expensive, though. If you've had to buy an espresso coffee in a jar like Nescafe, it would cost about PS70 for the same amount of caffeine. And you look at it next to the next cafe and think, this is crazy. Interesting thing is that you couldn't buy it if you saw a jar of coffee that cost PS70. But it doesn't come in a jar. Instead, it comes in a pod that gives you a single dose of espresso coffee. So your frame of reference isn't Nescafe. When you put a 29p pod into an espresso machine, anything works. If I bought that for 29 people, it would cost me PS 2.20 at Starbucks. At Rolls-Royce, this machine is almost making me money. Royce and Maserati made their cars cheaper through innovation. They stopped showing them at car shows where they look expensive and started showing them at yacht and plane shows. If you've been looking at Learjets, Gulfstreams, and Sunseekers all afternoon, a €250,000 car is an impulse buy. By the way, if you let people pay for something without touching it, it feels 15 cheaper. So innovation is a very important thing. The worst thing about minicabs was that they always lied about how long it would take. I know this is a simple thing to do, but it was awful. Matrix displays on the platform were the one thing that London Transport did that improved passenger satisfaction the most per pound spent. Faster, more frequent trains weren't what did it. It was the displays. We'd rather wait 9 minutes for a train we know will take 9 minutes than 5 minutes for a train we don't know when it will come. We hate uncertainty. When it comes to queuing, there are about 9 psychological factors that affect how people feel about a queue. Don't use common sense because all of your competitors will. Instead, try things that don't make sense because your competitors won't.